Competition, Preliminary Round 2, sponsored by ProQuest. I'm your host for today, Dr. Jesse Aleman. I happen to be the WAGS member at large. I sit on the executive committee, and I'm also the Associate Dean of Graduate Studies at the University of New Mexico. Thanks for taking the time this morning to join us for this wonderful event. I want to go ahead and mention real quickly, if we can move to the next slide, that there are a handful of rules that our 3MT folks already know about. We have 3 minutes, 1 slide, no animation. Our scoring criteria are on the WAGS website, and we are joined today by 3 wonderful judges. Dr. Chevelle Newsom, the Dean of Graduate Studies at CSU Sacramento, Christina Oni, Dean of Graduate Division at the University of Hawaii, and Luis Vega, Interim Associate Dean at CSU Bakersfield. We also have technical support today provided by my own colleague, Dr. Will Gannon. We request that there are no questions from the audience, and please remember to mute yourselves if you are not already muted on your platform. So I want to go ahead and get us started since we have a wonderfully full docket today. Our first presenter is Lupe Franco in the Environmental Studies Department at San Jose State University. Lupe's a faculty mentor is Dr. Constance Rampini, and the presentation title today is Preventing Falls in Parkinson's Disease. So first and foremost, Lupe, are you ready?
Yes, hi Jesse, I'm ready.
All right, Lupe, you may proceed when the clock reaches the 3-minute mark. So we're gonna give you a 3-second countdown and then we're gonna go.
Okay. This is Greg Turola, a Sacramento local who had been unhoused and is part of the 150,000 individuals who are homeless in California. This is also the site where a lot of the 6,000 individuals are currently present in the Sacramento region. Greg unfortunately was found unresponsive on a 37-degree morning, wrapped in cold blankets that were soaked from the previous night's rain. Unhoused populations like Greg face many challenges, including being discriminated based on their socioeconomic status, being criminalized by police, being dehumanized by society, and to add to this list, they are now the victims of climate change. Climate change will exacerbate the intensity and frequency of extreme weather events such as heat waves, wildfires, and flooding, all of which are present in California and all of which will have negative effects on the health and well-being of unhoused communities. In my research, I wanted to learn if California's cities and counties were developing strategies that address climate change, but also took into consideration unhoused populations. With this research, I interviewed planners from 7 cities and 4 counties to understand if they developed strategies that had these connections. What I learned was that climate change was a top priority. However, there was a considerable lack of developments on strategies that address the unique circumstances of unhoused individuals. Additionally, my research revealed that there was a lack of understanding from jurisdictions on the interconnectedness between climate change and homelessness. This is what researchers call the power of representation dilemma, which means that as outsiders, planners can only make assumptions of what their communities face and lack an understanding of what the actual local needs are. Based on these findings, I developed a set of best practices and recommendations to help planners better connect with their communities. One example is to have public sessions in public spaces, such as cooling centers and warming centers, which allow the opportunity for unhoused individuals to have input on what their actual needs are. As compensation, planners can have services such as food, water, and showers for this community. I hope that with this research and this conversation that we're having, there can be a spark for equitable and just strategies that not only give unhoused individuals a voice, but also access to critical resources. This is what Greg Turola deserved. Thank you.
Thank you, Lupe. Judges, go ahead and please submit your scores. And while they do, Lupe, tell us a little bit about how you got interested in this work in the first place.
Yeah, so I also wanted to give a disclaimer. The title was wrong. So my research is on the interconnectedness between climate change and homelessness. And so hopefully that wasn't too confusing. But to answer your question, Jesse, I got into this research based on, my positionality. So I'm originally from Boyle Heights, which is a community in Los Angeles. And it's also a community that's really close to Skid Row, an area in Los Angeles that has a really large unhoused population. I was started to get interested in the environmental field, and I saw that the conversations that we were having around environmental justice were just not involving this community. And so I wanted to better explore why that is and what we can do to better protect these communities who are now facing climate change.
Wow, thank you. And Lupe, I apologize for that. That's how that title showed up on my slides. If you don't mind, can you, just for clarity's sake, repeat your title one more time for us, please?
Yeah, so my title is Wicked Problems, Understanding How Cities and Counties in California Are Tackling Climate Change and Homelessness.
Thank you, Lupe. I appreciate that. Are we ready for our next contestant? If we are, can we go ahead and move to our next slide, please? We are. So Bill, can we go ahead and move to our next slide, please? And before I move on any more, I do hope that the presentation for this title is correct as well. Our next presenter is Mariana Marcos Hernandez in the program of chemistry at the University of Texas at El Paso. The faculty mentor is Dino Villagran, and the presentation title is Salt Shaker Sized Filters for Arsenic-Free Water. Mariana, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Oh, fantastic. You may proceed when the clock reaches the 3-minute mark.
Okay. Every 3 minutes, 2 children die from a water-related disease. Contaminated water threatens populations' health, security, and further economic and educational development. Therefore, contaminated water must be treated. And even though water treatment processes are well known in industry, there are still a lot of unsolved problems within. Research in our lab aims to understand the basic chemistry behind these water treatment processes in order to develop composite nanomaterials that can provide a solution. For example, arsenic, a poison which cannot be tasted, seen, or smelled when dissolved in water, can cause cancer, heart, and lung diseases, even when it is ingested in very small amounts in the parts per billion level. And the cost in the US for arsenic-related mortalities is of more than $500 million per year. Las Colonias in the US-Mexico border region exemplify this problem, since their water is contaminated with arsenic 8 times the federal limit. People in these areas get water from their own unregulated wells, or they have to rely on bottled water. So why not invest in a point-of-use water technology that can ensure people safe drinking water? Imagine deploying salt shaker-sized filters that can provide arsenic-free water. In our lab, we have developed magnetic composite nanomaterials with high affinity towards arsenic species, which have proved to remove arsenic well below EPA limits. By using only 60 grams inside a small device, we can provide arsenic-free water for over 6 months to a household. Added to this, their magnetic response makes the device easy to install into a water tap, while also immobilizing the nanomaterials. Moreover, we have studied arsenic absorption mechanisms, regeneration and recovery of the materials, and all of this has been done using a realistic drinking water matrix, which means that our materials can remove arsenic in the presence of competing species. Other projects in our lab include silica removal from RO feed waters, bacteria and biofilm disruption from membranes, nitrate reduction with affordable electrodes, and perfluoroalkyl substances detection. With continuous support in these important research areas, we can provide safe water for people, saving billions of dollars in healthcare, not to mention saving lives, just as the 2 lives that we just lost over these past 3 minutes. Thank you.
Judges, go ahead and please submit your scores. And while they're doing that, Mariana, please tell us a little bit about how you got interested in this research.
Okay, yes. So I'm actually from Chihuahua, Mexico, and I'm going to school. I'm getting my PhD in chemistry at UTEP, which is in El Paso. So I live in the U.S.-Mexico border region, and I'm a chemist. So I've been working in the lab that I'm working for is focused on, it's in organic chemistry. We make a lot of different nanomaterials, but the connection between water being a universal need, as we all know, and nanomaterials, that just got me very interested. And all of the work that I've been doing during my PhD is focused on nanomaterials for water treatment problems, because I don't know, I just think there's no need to explain why water is needed.
Especially in the region that you're in, right?
Exactly.
Where it is,
especially in the desert. Yes.
Is the most precious commodity, it seems to me.
Yes.
Are we ready for our next contestant, judges? So while we're hanging out, waiting on them, I do hope that we can get those scores in for just a minute so that we can move to our next contestant. And there we have it. Our next contestant is Varsha Kaushik, out of graduate program of computer science at the University of Colorado at Boulder, with faculty mentors Dr. Sean Kane and Dr. Tamara Sumner. The presentation title is Empowering People with Cognitive Disabilities Through Adaptive Interfaces. Varsha, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
And when you may proceed when the clock reaches the 3-minute mark, okay?
Meet Lisa, a 25-year-old woman with cognitive disabilities who loves cooking, playing video games, and following her friends on social media. Because of her disabilities, she currently lives in a community home with her caregiver, Sally, but she hopes to be independent someday and work at a coffee shop. She has difficulties in remembering things, paying attention, making decisions, and lacks the motivation to do essential everyday activities that are tied to independent living, like brushing teeth. She needs stepwise instructions to brush her teeth. She needs to know how long she has to brush her teeth, and she needs constant feedback to know if she's doing something wrong and how she can correct herself. Because of all these needs, she's using an iPad that shows her a list of steps to follow. But this strategy has 3 problems. 1, it causes distractions. Lisa has to constantly pause brushing her teeth to see steps on a separate device. 2, it is passive. It tells Lisa what the steps are and hopes she will do it correctly without any feedback. 3, it's quite tedious and makes brushing teeth boring. Lisa already lacks the motivation to brush her teeth. Can she have her favorite celebrity Drake sing to her while she brushes her teeth? No, not right now. All the device shows her is a list of steps in text and images. People like Lisa do really well when they receive support in real time on a fixed device and can personalize that information to their individual needs. What does that mean? Imagine Lisa standing in front of a smart mirror where Drake is talking to her and encouraging her to brush her teeth. I have developed Activity Mirror, an augmented reality smart mirror that supports people with cognitive disabilities in their daily activities. To build Activity Mirror, I integrated myself within local organizations, and I engaged people with cognitive disabilities in the design process. You can see on the slide that this mirror is no ordinary one. It solves all the 3 problems that we just talked about. 1, it is fixed, so it reduces distractions. Lisa doesn't have to worry about bringing a device into the bathroom every time she brushes her teeth. 2, it gives Lisa continuous feedback through augmented reality. It gives her stepwise instructions and helps her track progress. 3, it makes brushing teeth more enjoyable through avatars, animations, memes, and games. So maybe one day Drake is motivating her to brush her teeth. The next day, Jamie Oliver is showing her cupcake recipes. My research has developed a design to empower people with cognitive disabilities, and this work can lead to more adaptive assistive devices in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Varsha. Tell us a little bit, Varsha, about how you came to this research and why the University of Colorado at Boulder is a good place for you to do this kind of work.
Yeah, in my master's degree, I started doing accessibility research, making programming languages or coding more accessible to students with visual impairments. And at CU, there's a lot of faculty who do work in accessibility and human-computer interaction fields. And so I found my mentors there, and we've been doing impactful work.
Are you from the Boulder area or the Colorado area?
No, I'm originally from India.
So you've come a long way to do some really, really engaging work, it seems.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Judges, I hope we're working on our scores, and I hope we are ready to move on to our next contestant. Our next contestant is Shauna Adele Lanzetta, and the graduate program of interdisciplinary health at Northern Arizona University. Her faculty mentors are Emery Eves and Dr. Laura Knoll. And the presentation title is Mothers of the NICU, How Race, Class, Gender, Culture, and Status Shape Experiences of Institutional Care. Shauna, are you ready?
I am.
All right, you may proceed once the clock reaches the 3-minute mark.
Imagine you are the mom on the left. You are mesmerized by your baby. You feel in sync. As your breath slows, her heartbeat matches yours. It's true, we are physiologically connected to our babies. In fact, our needs and her needs are not merely connected, but interdependent. You are now the mom entering the scene on the right. You are alone and afraid amid a frenzy of professionals in the neonatal intensive care unit, or NICU. Your heart aches to hold her and feel her heartbeat against yours. In the US, 1 in 10 women is exposed to this unique ongoing trauma, chiefly because care fails to recognize that the mother's health is not divorced from her baby's health. And once in the NICU, research shows a robust correlation between NICU exposure and symptoms of PTSD, anxiety, and stress. Each year, that amounts to 500,000 mothers at risk for trauma exposure, constituting a national public health crisis. This was also my experience and my motivation to study maternal trauma and what we can do to mitigate it. 2 decades of research tell us that pregnant women are exposed to vast differences in maternity care based on race, class, gender, culture, and social status, inequalities that increase the risk for NICU admission. For women of color, that risk is 2 to 3 times that of white women, regardless of education or income. Yet experiences of discriminatory care have been understudied, and so far, the exact mechanisms associated with disparities remain opaque. But what if this could be different? Academics who study maternal trauma suggest that in order to understand the impact of health, we must understand how neonatal and obstetric medicine is lived and understood by women at large and by marginalized communities. This is my PhD research. My research studies how race, class, and gender influence a mother's access to quality maternal care at various levels of interaction. I use feminist ethnographic techniques to interview 40 NICU mothers from diverse backgrounds throughout the US to gather their stories of how violations of trust at the system level shape perceptions of care. Women express a consistent message. Institutions can contribute to mothers feeling uncared for, unvalued, and unsafe. The narratives gathered helped create a new NICU questionnaire that quantitatively measures how violations of trust by any member or policy of an institution contribute to maternal trauma. Addressing this gap will help inform how to resolve this problem. My research leads to a tangible change, institutional accountability that prioritizes dignified care, not only for the baby on her right, but also her mother. Thank you.
Thank you, Shauna. And while the judges are considering your conversation, tell us a little bit about how you came to this important research.
Well, as I mentioned, I am a NICU mother, and I experienced the type of care that comes with having a high-risk baby and the care that preceded and followed it. And it led me to really look at the systems of care that we have, particularly when you see other babies and families going through this situation like yourself.
Absolutely. I think this goes to show that researchers are always paying attention to the world around them, even the way the world is impacting them directly. Thank you for that. Our next presenter, and I need to first find out if Sina is with us. So first and foremost, Sina, if you have joined us, can you go ahead and turn off your mic and let me know? Okay, if not, I'm gonna go ahead and ask that our judges note that on their scoring sheet and that we move to our next presenter. If you just give me a minute to work through some of my own paperwork for just a minute. So let's go ahead and move to our next presenter, and that will be Dalton Miller out of the graduate program of chemistry at Boise State University. Dalton's faculty mentor is Dr. Ken Cornell, and Dalton's presentation today is inactivation of biofilms in chronic wounds using cold atmospheric pressure plasma. Dalton, are you ready?
I am indeed.
All right, you may proceed when the clock reaches the 3-minute mark, Dalton.
All right. Chronic wounds, seen here on your left, are wounds that fail to heal for months to years from their initial onset. They affect more than 6.5 million Americans every single year, and their treatment costs northwards of $50 billion annually. Now, obviously, that's a lot of money, right? That's very expensive. But what's significantly more costly than that is the amount of pain and suffering that people with these wounds have to go through. You see, once a week, these patients will go into a wound care facility where a doctor will unwrap their wound, snag a bottle of antiseptic, and vigorously scrub out the wound site. Now, this is necessary to kill any bacteria or fungi present that could cause an infection. But, well, as you may imagine, vigorously scrubbing an open wound is an excruciating procedure, to say the least. Now, after this, the doctor will trim any dead tissue from the wound site, rinse the wound out, wrap it back up, give the patient a pat on the back and say, well, we'll see you in a week. Hopefully that will heal. Of course, the doctor can't actually say when or even if the wound will heal. I don't think that any of you here today would describe that procedure as ideal, effective, or even particularly good. And it's to that end that we're working on a new method for treating chronic wounds. It uses an ionized gas, also called a plasma, which you can see there on your right, and it works by generating a wide variety of highly reactive molecules that serve two basic functions in the wound site. The first of those functions is in sterilization. The molecules generated have the capacity to kill bacteria and fungi that could cause an infection. And because we're using a gas rather than the more traditional liquid antiseptic, no vigorous, painful scrubbing is necessary. Now, the second of these two functions is in wound healing signaling. As an example here, if you get a cut on the back of your hand, your body will begin producing these exact same molecules to tell the cells around the cut to begin dividing and thus healing the cut. By directly introducing these molecules to the wound site, we can speed up the rate of wound healing simply by telling the patient's own body to heal the wound faster. Right now, we're testing in pig wounds to determine safety and efficacy, but our initial results are fairly promising. In as little as a 10-minute treatment, which is less time than it often takes to scrub these sorts of wounds out, we're seeing good sterilization of bacterial species, as well as no damage to the surrounding pig tissue. And we hope that eventually this will be used clinically, both to decrease the amount of pain associated with having a chronic wound, as well as, more importantly, to speed up the rate of wound healing so that we can give these patients their lives back. Thank you.
Dalton, thank you for that conversation. Again, tell us a little bit about what brought you to this field of research and what generated your interest in it.
Sure. It's really a combination of two different things. I've always found myself pulled towards medicine. I found that an area of great interest personally. And so I always knew that that was where I wanted to do research. But then beyond that, the sorts of research that I've always been more interested in are the more practical applications and understanding those more practical applications. So working on something where there's a direct translation from the work that I'm doing to characterize the molecules we're producing to being able to use this device to directly impact people's lives, I found that immensely compelling. And that's what made me want to join the lab in the first place.
Thank you for that, Dalton. We're going to go ahead and move to our next presenter. I believe this is also our final presenter for the day, and it will be Amelia Munson on the graduate program of animal behavior at the University of California at Davis. Amelia's mentors are Dr. Andy C. at UC Davis and Dr. Sean Killen at Glasgow. The presentation title is One Big Problem, One Tiny Solution. So Amelia, are you ready?
I am, but my title is incorrect. Would you like the real one?
Oh my goodness gracious. I would like the real title because this is becoming one very big problem and without a big solution. Go ahead.
It's fact or fiction. Does what doesn't kill you really make you stronger?
Okay, so fact or fiction, what doesn't kill you will make you stronger. And you may proceed when the clock reaches the 3-minute mark, Amelia.
All of my favorite stories from childhood involve some amount of danger. They're the times I fell out of a treehouse and then got right back up again. And I think I like these stories because these are the moments that made me the resilient adult that I am today. And I think this idea that hardships make us stronger is a really common narrative. But interestingly, it's not the logic we use when we are tasked with taking care of some of nature's most valuable babies, endangered wild animals. Take salmon, for instance. When we raise this culturally and economically important fish species in captivity, we bring them to these really sheltered hatcheries before releasing them into the wild where they have to deal with real predators that really want to kill them. And importantly, captive raised fish have lower survival compared to wild-born individuals. The question that really motivated my dissertation was whether there are experiences that we can give fish during development that would make them more resilient as adults. So the way that I did this was I brought Western mosquito fish into the lab, I bred them, and then I exposed them to a variety of different stressors. So you can see that I have these red fish who are exposed to change in temperatures, the blue group that got the very scary scent of largemouth bass, the purple group that were exposed to both, and the golden group that didn't have to deal with anything stressful. And some of the effects on the adults are obvious just by looking at them. You can see that my middle two groups, the blue and purple groups, they were smaller as adults compared to my other treatments. And that's interesting because these are the groups that were exposed to predators as babies, and smaller fish are just less appetizing to predators. But I actually cared less about what my fish looked like and more about who they were. Essentially, I wanted to give them a BuzzFeed-style personality quiz, but with questions that a fish could answer. So to do this, I measured their behavior in a variety of different contexts. And I think the most interesting thing I found is also the most fundamental. If you take these fish and you put them into a new tank and measure their activity, fish from all three of my top groups, so fish exposed to any challenge, were more consistent than the fish who didn't experience stress. And that's interesting because consistency is this fundamental trait of behavior that we see in all wild fish populations that helps them coordinate group behavior and more effectively avoid predators. So I think my golden group is just behaving much more erratically as adults, which makes them more susceptible to predators. If we can use these relatively simple developmental mechanisms to improve real-world fish survival, we could really help salmon. Because my fish are this great reminder that what doesn't kill you doesn't just make you stronger, it makes you normal. Thank you.
Amelia, thank you for that. And again, I apologize for the incorrect title on your slide, as well as the incorrect title on Lupe's slide. But tell us a little bit about what brought you into this field of research.
Well, I mean, I think like generally, I just love fish because they are totally fascinating animals. But I think more sort of just generally, I was really interested in this idea of whether or not stress that we experience when we're young is universally bad. And I think part of that was that actually in the middle of my dissertation, I was diagnosed with cancer. So while I was conducting these experiments, I was also going through chemotherapy and radiation. And I spent a lot of time thinking about like whether these challenges in my own life were just they were going to like ruin my life forever because I experienced something challenging? Or were there things that we can get from this that sort of make us stronger moving forward?
Well, thank you for that. While I'm waiting to hear on final tallies of our top two contestants here, I first of all want to thank all of you for presenting some great research. The diversity of the research alone is absolutely astonishing on the one hand. And I also like to thank the judges and our participants who joined us this morning to do this kind of work. I realize that under Zoom, it is always a very, very bizarre way of sort of handling this this kind of presentation of research. If most of you are like me, I like to be on a stage talking about my work, pacing around and being energetic about it. So I do appreciate your ability to really sort of, for all of you, to express that energy in front of a camera at your desktop, because it's very, very difficult to convey that on 2-dimension. If only we can be back in person, which would be getting us fantastic on that sense. So I do hope those tallies are coming along so that we can move towards closing up our session here. And as it turns out, so let me wait for just a minute here, as I'm getting results real time, so to speak. So let me go ahead and wait on this. So thank you very much for Emma for getting me this. I'm very happy to let folks know that the judges have selected Amelia and Dalton as our preliminary round winners. So congratulations to Amelia and to Dalton. I'd like to thank all of you for your presentations today, but Amelia and Dalton will be proceeding to the next round, the 3MT competition. So again, thank you all for some wonderfully engaged and engaging and critically important scholarship, research, and solving some serious problems that we all face. I am optimistic about the future of my world, knowing that you all are envisioning solutions to major problems of climate change, water, endangered species, chronic pain. So I appreciate all of it, and I thank you very much. Thank you again, judges. And I will go ahead and inform the folks above me about our winners for the day. So thank you very, very much.